um, Sustainability Practice Group conversation. As you received in your notice, we're not really talking about what a green product is. We're not trying to define it, but we'd certainly like your thoughts about what's happening in the industry. For example, I received an advertisement from a brick manufacturer saying that their brick earned the project 56 LEED credits, and gee, that would have been enough for certification. I called the manufacturer and I said, your marketing department's really got pretty carried away here, and they said, well, that wasn't my decision, and so that manufacturer's advertisement still claims that reference. On the screen here you see all the different labels, some of which end up in my specs. Spend most of my time as a spec writer, but it's a real problem. So should CSI stay out of this? Should CSI write letters to people? Could CSI dream of being a Consumer Reports? That's really pretty difficult. But Rob, is this readable on your screen? You there?
It would help to have it just a tad larger, perhaps, but I can read it, absolutely.
Well, this is just the 10 signs of greenwash, and it's from, maybe I can make this a little bigger. I don't want to hit View Show because it will really muck things up, but what this says is, number one is fluffy language, words or terms with no meaning, i.e. eco-friendly. 2, green products and a dirty company, such as light bulbs made in a factory which pollutes rivers. 3 is suggestive pictures, green images that indicate green impact, which isn't justified, i.e. flowers coming from exhaust pipes. 4 is irrelevant claims, emphasizing one tiny green attribute when everything else is not green. 5 is best in class, declaring you're slightly greener than the rest, even if the rest are terrible. 6 is just not credible, eco-friendly cigarettes. Greening a dangerous product doesn't make it safe. 7 is gobbledygook, jargon and information that only a scientist could understand. 8 is imaginary friends, a label that looks like third-party endorsement, except it's made up. 9 is no proof. 10 is outright lying. There was the UN climate change. 9 out of 10 people believe that people were greenwashing, and there was a greenwashing index scoring tool. Cool. How many buckets does your ad deserve? 5 buckets is unconscionable, and 1 bucket is passable. So I think, Rob, why don't we try unmuting?
Muted.
Well, it appears we have all lost sound. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me or not. I'm also not really sure how this happened. As I was trying to kind of unmute everyone, I may have just hit the mute all button by accident there. Not real sure how to fix this at this point either. All right, I think I'm unmuted now. Mark, it looks like to unmute you again, I need you to enter your audio pin, which should just be *, or I'm sorry, #10#, if I'm reading it correctly.
Working with Rob. This is, thank you for your
We've got
patience.
you back now.
Rob tells me that I'm back online now, and fortunately I saw the lines go blank, so you didn't miss anything. The issue is that I'd asked Rob to let other people on the line, and 5 attendees are currently unmuted, so maybe this is working correctly. If you can, if the people are online, if you could, all right, so we now have 10 unmuted. Cheryl Dodd-Hanson, can you hear me? Cheryl?
I think I'm here.
Yes, Cheryl, you're there.
Brown sugar.
Well, the prediction has come true that when you invite 25, as many as 25 people into a call, that someone is doing other work or has noise in the background. So either this is the wrong venue, or I will continue to pose the issue. I see more people are on. Cheryl, are you still there?
Yeah, Mark, I'm here.
Well, let me ask you a question so we can at least carry on a conversation with a smaller number of people if people aren't typing a message in. With your role and knowledge of CSI and the fact that there may be some false green claims there, do you think that the practice group should stay out of being the green police just because it's not something appropriate for an organization to do, or has this come up before?
To be honest, we're not clear exactly on what the role should be. That's why I tuned into your practice group today. This is my first time. I wanted to see what your conversation was about. So I don't have an answer off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
All right. Mike McVitie from our National Technical Committee, looks like Mike is still there. Mike, are you on?
I should be.
Yes, I can hear you, Mike.
Good.
This had come up a little bit in Technical Committee, but did you have an initial thought about whether CSI should get involved with monitoring green efforts?
Well, I was starting to type in a comment, which would be that if the CSI were to be involved, I think it should be done very carefully. And my thinking in that regard would be to establish sort of performance criteria for products or a group of products, and place the greenness kind of within the spectrum of that. Because this greenwashing thing is more than annoying. Half the time, or 90% of the time, you don't know what the standard is for green. And so I think if the CSI were to be involved, it needs to be a bit more technical or scientific in its approach. And we need to get away from subjective standards and move towards trying to provide some objectivity to it all. That would be my thought on it.
Well, I think those are really good comments. These slides, which are from a PowerPoint I did with Allison Kin-Bennett and Paul Bertram a while ago, I wasn't really meaning to show a PowerPoint today, but having a blank screen is a problem. You know, points out that people like UL or and ICC are out there trying to verify manufacturers' claims, and they have a long history of a scientific approach and a lot of money. And so if CSI, green format, for example, that CSI has is really self-reporting. If a manufacturer says they have 80% recycled content, then hallelujah. But we don't verify it. I want to bring up another screen here. Let me just flip through some PowerPoints. Please don't try and read these as they go through. Sorry if I'm making anybody dizzy, but there's so many. This is a picture of a base from somebody who makes a wall base that's removable, reusable, no sealants, made from PVC. And is this an example of greenwash at different levels? Personally, I've come to terms with PVC if it's handled correctly, because the other chemicals are equally inedible. But I don't know in my entire career whether I've ever seen a wall base that was going to be reused, and or an owner that moved that much. So I'm sure that this manufacturer is responding to a market need, but certainly that's more expensive having a receiver than not. And is no sealants good? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's on the outside of the building, I think you need sealants. If is material reuse important? Yes, but it's PVC that's being reused. So how do we? I mean, we're all annoyed about it, but what can we do about it? I guess.
So can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this?
This is Brian Whitehart.
Hi, Brian.
The first thing that came to mind when I saw this subject was that CSI has traditionally not been a content provider. It's been a format and organizational scheme provider, and getting into the evaluation of green claims would change that.
Well, is CSI with green format in the content business? Although it's not CSI's content. It's like www2, where you let somebody else build your content for you.
Right. So it's just it's a bag. It's a holder or a format for the data. And that I was when I was a brand new CSI member, I kept looking around for content, and lo and behold, it was not to be found. So I come to terms with that, and appreciate CSI for what it does in that vein. So I could go either way, but I'm not sure CSI has the resources to really do this right. And I think there are other organizations that are probably in a better position to do it than CSI is for this specific set of tools. So that's kind of where I start at with this. I think there's a role, a forum, a discussion group on the website or whatever that is a place to report greenwash. And maybe some liaisons with organizations that do this as part of their normal activities. Maybe Snopes wants to have a corner of their website for debunking green claims. I don't know. I don't know which organizations are in a better position than CSI, but I expect they exist.
Well, this is Vivian Bowles.
Hi, Vivian.
Hi. This is Vivian Bowles, and I'm a specifier in the San Francisco chapter. And I agree. I think that CSI is not in a real good position to try to police claims, but that we are in a really good position to set and to continue to improve a standard for reporting, and self-reporting is an important part of that. I think green format does a good job and can continue to get better. But the organizations that are better at evaluating and balancing the differences between different green claims are people like Building Green, who spend all day doing it.
Right. They spend all day doing it, and they certainly back up their discussion with a lot of articles. And, well, if you can see what's on the screen right now, Vivian, I imagine yes. FSC shows up in your specs. Do any of those other groups show up in your specs on a
CRI, Floor Score, all the time. Green Guard, yes, quite a few of those do. Energy Star, and most of those are third-party testing, although CRI is one of the few industry standards that seems to carry a lot of weight.
All right, so we rely. I would guess from what you're saying that we all rely on these people to police the products that they represent. To if Carpet and Rug Institute needs to sample carpet every year, then you assume that they do it, and the building product manufacturers have a problem with this. There was a conference at the AIA because everybody wants their piece of the pie to substantiate recycled content or regional materials or VOC levels, and so it's expensive for the manufacturers. Well, if we can't sort of slap somebody on the wrist, I mean, as a member, I can call that brick manufacturer and say, gee, you contribute to 56 credits, but I'm doing that as an individual. On the other hand, we could potentially try and reward people. I mean, if people who've heard Ray Anderson at Interface heading toward, a zero net energy company or a zero carbon impact company, and that it's believable, and that perhaps if you're going out there with 3 equals for carpet tile, that Interface is somebody that you would include. Does anybody feel about, how does anyone feel about the direction of rewarding the good? Or are we going to have the same problem?
I can reward the good in my specs, but I don't know that I can reward the good as CSI.
Right. Okay. So, the convention committee could award the best booth, but they've got a list of criteria and a fixed time frame, and then kind of not an obvious or easy chore. But if CSI really couldn't say that they suggest to members that Interface is a better company than another. 1, because we don't know, and 2, because we really don't know, and it's a matter of what do you see as green. If there's a slide I've used before that shows a sluice gate in a dam, which is good news for protecting the farmers downstream from being flooded, but if you were a fish, it's particularly bad being drawn into the pump. So sustainability is a matter of perspective. Wade, are you there? Wade Bevier? Rob, have you unmuted Wade? I see that he might have his hand up.
I'll try it again. He appears unmuted on my screen.
Okay, so, all right. And Mike, did you have another comment? Mike McVitie?
I've been generally listening. The idea about setting standards, though, still makes some sense to me. Perhaps the standards can be driven or can be provided by the various associations so that CSI is not inventing them. But I don't know how to reward or slap anybody on the wrist without knowing where a product fits into the spectrum.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. And, you know, when we do work overseas and you talk about certified wood, they'll allow the European PEFC and the Canadian SFI as well as the US FSC certifications. But if you're going for a lead credit, you know, as of right now, FSC is the only one. And fortunately, I'm not smart enough to figure all that out because I think it's a remarkably complex issue, and I believe it was announced a few weeks ago that there's potentially a class action suit against the USGBC in that some engineers feel that USGBC is claiming that LEED buildings are more energy efficient, and the data is mixed on that. Some perform better, some perform the same, and some perform worse. But it doesn't seem really fair to me that some judge has to get involved in our business that way, or that funds have to. Well, okay, so I'm not a lawyer, so that's not my call. But the issue is, I guess we present topics that are of interest to members on various topics. Hope that people will stay in touch with the practice group, but I know in talking with Cheryl probably a couple of years ago that it's pretty clear that you know no one person can represent CSI unless the board has given them permission to do it, and I certainly think that's a great rule. So so that's, you know, because we have such a wide range. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts. You know, people. Paul Bertram is very interested in life cycle analysis and assessment, and I think that green format is still evolving. There's an effort to revitalize that I believe is going on at the board level. But here we are, a practice group, and the practice group should recommend to the various CSI committees and the CSI board what we as a practice group think you know, CSI should be doing. So based on our conversation at this point, we're a practice group and we can chat about things by ourselves in this group the same way. You know, for those of you who are spec writers and members of SCIP, there's always that couple hours at the annual meeting when people tend to, you know, speak their mind about, you know, their favorite or not so favorite company. But it's only meant in a you know, a sharing mode, and it's not recorded, it's not published. And I guess the dialogue on for specs, which is often very candid, if people are making a false claim, you know, I think that you know, that group kind of self-polices. So Wade, are you back? Okay, I thought you were unmuted there.
Yeah, no, he actually has no microphone. I've just been corresponding with him over chat.
All right. I have, Robert, have there been other people who wanted an offer their take on this?
Yeah, actually, we had quite a few more comments added in the questions tab. Brian Leihart, Vivian Bowles, Cheryl Hansen, and Wade also, I think, wrote in.
Brian had a comment. So I guess CSI, I'm just clicking through a few slides here. If trying to generate some comments, the International Organization for Standards is certainly looking at making things work and the different attributes. In the BIM practice group, in my conversation with those folks and the specification group, a lot of the issue is about the performance of products, and sustainability is just one of those attributes. And so, but so many projects seem to be struggling right now, just putting their lead documentation together. It's not difficult. It just means somebody has to chase it. There are definitely, just rules involved. So that moves forward.
And not to interrupt you here, Mark, but I'd just like to say anyone who has their hand raised or has posed a question, I've unmuted you if I can.
All right. Well, I'm going to go back through this. Brian, are you still on?
Yes.
And yes. What type of firm are you with?
Architecture.
Okay. So internally in your firm, do you let people go off on their own green track and make their own decisions? Or is there any way to steer people?
Well,
Do you go through a clearinghouse?
my interest in sustainability is pretty unilateral.
Okay.
The practice is such that our clientele hasn't evinced a lot of interest in green or sustainability, except as it shows up on first cost. So as far as the firm is concerned, there's not a lot of experience to go on. I've gone off on my own training route and spent some time looking at the issue, but I haven't been able to found an application for it at work.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are doing that. I was at Design Intelligence had a conference with 100 people on sustainability in Atlanta last week, and I went down, and Ray Anderson, the president of Interface, got up there and said, well, I'm 76 years old, and I have cancer, and every minute of his day and night is now spent thinking about the cancer, the same way that he feels that we as architects should have that feeling about the planet, because we can see the implications of what we're doing and perhaps do something about it. And his company is on track to be, carbon neutral by 2020, and he's really hoping he's gonna make it. But it was a very important personal statement. I came away enthused from that because individuals and groups are doing things that are wonderful. There are these 100,000-acre farms in Egypt and Eritrea and I think the UAE where they take raw ocean water, grow plants like microalgae and plants that produce nuts and berries that they can use for food and for fuel. And the airline industries are funding this because they have to be, I don't know if my statistics are right here, but in 2015 they have to have a carbon plan or be carbon neutral to land in a European airport. And and Gensler is the one helping these folks with all their various facilities. So, architectural and design firms are out there moving these things forward.
Yeah. So let me get back to the question that I posted, if I may, was perhaps CSI could reward well and fully presented green claims, whether they're true or not, if they're fully and completely presented. For example, a magazine ad that actually has some content besides "we're so green," basically.
Well, no, I agree with you. I mean, that ad that I was upset with was in the construction specifier as an article, and as an article in an ad, and I just said, well, who's minding the store? Maybe the people who put it in there agreed with the article, but to my way of understanding it, it didn't make much sense.
I guess, I mean, we have a format which constitutes a standard for presenting your product in a green context, in green format. If green format is satisfied in something, in some literature, a company is publishing.
Yeah, I think you know, I'm just trying to see where that might lead, because with green format, if there was a way for CSI to verify the claims, but that would take money and staff that aren't really available, and then I'm
not really suggesting that we verify the claims, only that we acknowledge compliance with the standard.
What we're really good at is organizing information and presenting it in such a way that people can make good decisions with it. And I think that that's really our best role in this, because it is desperately needed. It's hard to. There are a few organizations that are trying to do a better job of representing green information, and we're one of them. And I think that the better we can help people balance claims like, well, it's got a carbon footprint that's out of this world, but part of what they're doing is recycling glass. Where do you balance that information? And I think that ultimately it comes down a little bit to what is the client passionate about, and a little bit to what can they get a tax credit for? What do they think that their customers care about?
So perhaps CSI could, if we're not a content provider, we can, let people know the options for making their projects more sustainable, or what states have. See, there probably are websites that, or at least maybe CSI could collect the names of the websites to let you check whether your state has, green tax incentives or pieces in part. Vivian, so when you're doing a lead project, do different products come into your spec, or is it pretty much mainstream now?
It's fairly mainstream.
So you don't.
Right now it seems to me that the really innovative products aren't in lead yet. And so lead is beside the point. If you're really interested in, I guess the renewable resources replacement for vinyl composition tile, for instance, is in lead, but the reduced carbon footprint brick is not. It varies quite a bit.
Right.
But the really innovative stuff is generally, it's so innovative that lead hasn't recognized it yet.
Or it doesn't meet a threshold. I was talking with the
Right.
EcoShade people who make EcoVale, which, as far as I can tell, is edible, non-mutagenic, non-tentrogenic, non-cancerogenic, but cancer-producing, but it's still made in China. But there's a company that believes that you can save energy with shading systems, and I have to say that in all the rankings of green initiatives, that personally, your mechanical engineer, your exterior wall designer, and your water person are the three most important contributors to making a building work right. It's, you know, a 100% paper mache roof might be 100% recycled content with 0 VOCs, but it's not a roof, so no one would use it as a roof. So it's really about higher performing materials, and the manufacturers, when they list the attributes of their products, I think sustainability has finally taken, you know, at least a seat at the table, but it's not often first, and not often the reason you'd pick something. And I think we all know that in our practice. Cheryl, if you're still on, do you change products in your specs when you hit a lead project, or is being in California put you there already?
Pretty much the latter, but you know, it depends on the situation. Some of them, yeah, we do have to change. But what I would like to comment on is that at the board meeting this last weekend, we spent some time brainstorming about, based on our strategic plan, we want CSI to provide practice tools to the industry. And among those may be ways to help people select the correct products based on sustainability and environmental considerations. And, you know, the board is 21 people kicking around ideas. Your practice group here can get 50 people or more kicking around ideas. And that's, I think, the value of what you're doing here, is to bring together ideas of what is needed by the industry to help incorporate all these various standards into the built environment, and what can CSI provide to help people do that. Paul Bertram led this discussion, talked about the chemistry of concerns, and how one chemical, and I think you hit on this, Mark, one chemical in a product that may be a problem, when you take it out, what is it that they substitute, and is it worse? How can we know those things? Can we help people know what they need to evaluate in order to get the best product for their project? So I'd like you guys to do that, do some of that brainstorming and bring it to the board. If you can figure out, is there a checklist that would be the right thing to help people, then we can assign people to create whatever this practice tool is that would be helpful. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I mean, we have, Rob was telling me, we have over 1,100 people who've asked to be on the email notification of our meetings, or our monthly, I don't know what you exactly call them, they're not webinars, but they're just meetings. And I guess I could work with Paul. I don't want to, I guess I'd like the people on the call to email me or Rob with questions they might like to see on a survey or direction, so that we could potentially take those items, send them out to the 1,100 people in the practice group, rank them, and then tell the board this is what's important to members. And it could be more content or less content. It could be you know, you give somebody a green speeding ticket when they remove their membership, and penalize them 15 yards when they make a false claim. But I'm just being facetious. That can't really happen, I guess. So it sounds like we need to keep CSI directed in a positive mode. Perhaps I don't know whether, just free-willing thinking maybe, that the awards committee creates a category of, you know, companies trying to state their sustainability, and they submit their case and some reference letters, and a committee of CSI people potentially offer them an award, much like they do a newsletter award. There could be 30 of them a year, and it would just give those manufacturers an opportunity to say, look, we're trying. So maybe we can come up with some ideas like that.
Mark?
Yes.
Yes, this is Wade. I finally have a microphone so I can have a two-way conversation here. Last week I made contact with an individual who's starting a program that's looking to evaluate products and their claims and figure out how they fit into the market as a whole, but seems to still not really understand about the role that specifications have in that. And he and I have a telephone conversation scheduled for tomorrow afternoon to discuss the how products can be evaluated, and then how can that translate into a requirement in a specification. Their group is called the Institute for Market Transformation to Sustainability, and he was one of the founders of USGBC back in the 90s, and is developing a coalition of persons, and I'll know more about what they're actually trying to do after this meeting tomorrow, but it sort of ties in well with the discussion we're having here as to, how do we look at it, and what determines a green product, and how do you say so?
Well, and perhaps you could invite them to, do a 15-minute presentation for one of our monthly calls. We've done some of those things in the past. Barbara Bachelom from the Green Roundtable in Boston had a coalition. I know that CSI has some relationship with Green Wizard. And if those groups would like feedback, with the practice group, we could, I think I know the group you're talking about, and they certainly have credibility, and there's product selection and there's spec writing.
Right.
And the issue is product selection. I've talked with the Green Wizard people, and they can optimize on 7 or 8 categories of sustainability, but with roofing, not leaking is not one of their categories. So you have to look pretty broadly at what you define as performance.
Well, what they're looking at on this one of their key components seems to be looking at the life cycle assessment, which would evaluate more on the performance. And
that's a great idea.
And like I say, they're looking at how do you balance the life cycle assessment with selecting the right product for what the intent of the design for whatever the building is looking to achieve. So at any rate, that as it happens, though, my meeting isn't until tomorrow afternoon, but once I come out of that, I'll see if maybe try to make contact with you and see what maybe we can do about getting them to get the consensus from this group.
Yeah, or maybe if it turns out that that you as a member of this group want 5 minutes just to recap your meeting. The same way I'd invite anyone on the call if they had a meeting that they attended, or something that they'd like to bring to people's attention. CSI is really about collaboration. That's always been the best part of CSI as far as I'm concerned. But so maybe we could move the group in that direction.
Well, one of the things we're looking at is taking the concept of green format. I've been getting a lot of questions from the manufacturers when I try to explain to them what green format can bring to the table, because they're, of course, looking for how can they be the basis of design and have a proprietary spec. And I keep telling them I can't go that way, but give me what it is that you're evaluating about your product. And oh, by the way, green format can give you a checklist that you can start from as to being able to at least evaluate it the same way everybody else is evaluating it. And that gives the spec writer a lot more information that's consistent from one product to another. And that's kind of something that's sort of being developed at this point, but I'm going to see if I can elaborate on that as we go along too.
Well, I
this
think,
is Vivian.
Yep.
One thing that would be a really good development for green format would be to start to figure out if it can put out a report that would fit in with the other formats that we work with. Can it put out a report that would populate the performance information in a BIM model that an engineer can use to evaluate the building performance and other data like that? I think when we start to think about interoperability of the data that we're helping people represent, that could be really exciting.
There are
in a geeky sort of way.
Yes, no, I think it would be very exciting. There have been people working on something loosely called BIM format, where you would list the attributes for a particular building product that are essential and less essential for a model, because there's a limit to the amount of data. You know, Mike McVitie, who's on the call, has something that he calls spec tags, where you might put into the model the fact that it's an elevator with 7 stops, 2,500-pound capacity, 100 feet per minute, and move some of that data out of the spec and into the model. And because each BIM object can have a little schedule with it that you can edit without seeing the graphics. So I think there is, you know, BIM is that neck of the funnel that's forcing everybody to just sort of get in line, almost like Microsoft Word or the dictionary for the English language. And I think those are all positive things. So we can, Vivian, when you were talking, I thought maybe what you were headed toward saying was that, you know, CSI, you know, on this call, I did a summary of where sustainability went into uniformat, master format, you know, section format.
Sorry, I missed it.
And we could put, I can send you the handout, but it was, you know, potentially we could develop language. I think anybody who's a spec consultant on the call knows that they've got language that, you know, this is lead for carpet for a CHIPS project or a lead project or a lead CI project, a lead NC project, and it's all a little different. And maybe we could collectively, you know, just put some language out there that people could comment on. I don't know if the CSI Wiki is still live, but maybe there's a way. And if not, if we're not able to put a flag up the flagpole the way LEED is doing, then at least we can hope to cover in these calls. You know, maybe it's life cycle assessment, maybe it's, you know, the next generation of light bulbs, not product presentations, but, you know, people who look across an industry, so we can all get some advice. I know that at the next convention, which is until September of next year, that the practice groups have a request in for a slot the same way we did last year. The sustainability and BIM practice groups met together for an hour and a half, and there were 90 people in the room, and it was, I thought, quite a good conversation. So, you know, I guess we should move in that direction. So we're coming up to our end for this hour, and I'd really like it if people would email either a question for a survey or a direction that CSI might take, and I'll present this at the beginning of the call next month, which, if we're true to form, would be the third Tuesday, which would be well, let's see. I had it down for, no, November 16th, I guess that would be our next call. Rob, if you're still on, I think that's correct. And maybe we can, maybe we can, in addition to do presentations, try and start each of these calls with a little summary, somebody on the call presenting something they found useful or that others might like to look at. Because it really needs to be about this collaboration. Cheryl, any final thoughts or anything else the board might like from this group?
Sorry, I muted myself.
Do you think there's anything more that the board would look to this group to do for them?
If this group can provide guidance on what CSI needs to produce, and obviously a lot of the interest and talent resides in the people who are signed up for this group. I can tell you from sitting in on the specifying practice group that there's getting a lot of really good presentation and dialogue there, and and I'm writing down the names and taking notes here. So this is where the talent is that we can draw on. We don't have to necessarily know personally each person, but we'll be starting to find out who the people are who really have an interest and knowledge, and get them to provide input. And that's why I came on the call today, and I think I got that from you, so I'm pleased. So thank you.
Well, thank you as well. It's great to have board representatives on the call. Wade, are you still on the board, or did you rotate off?
I rotated off. I'm on some of the task teams, but no longer on the board.
Okay.
Working at a regional level instead right now.
Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. Anyone have any last comments before we sign off for the day?
I just sent you a link to some of the information that I'll be following up with after tomorrow's meeting, so you'll be able to take a look at it and see what you think initially.
Okay, and I'll report back on anything I can beg, borrow, or steal as far as comments from people at the start of our next call. And thank you all then for dialing in today. Hope to have you on board again November 16th at 3 o'clock.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, signing off.